This is an important message from the New York State Police. The search continues for two men who escaped from the Clinton Correctional Facility.
These men are considered armed.
Hundreds of officers on a massive manhunt.
They are killers. They are murderers.
Tonight on 2020 Manhunt. From New York to Mexico, it is the summer of prison escapes.
All right, we're inside the El Chapo tunnel.
And we're taking you dead center.
You're really starting with two people who have no trail. It's like chasing a ghost.
23 days and nights of terror with two cold-hearted killers on the loose.
If you wanted to take a picture of the devil, that's the face that you would see.
Richard Matt and David Sweat, desperate convicts who don't feel pain, literally.
He's a freaking crazy lunatic maniac.
And don't mind causing it.
He's a monster. There's some sort of chemical imbalance in his head.
And just this week, Sweat speaking out. All new details, planning their escape for months. A crash diet to fit through a tiny tunnel. Hacksaws smuggled in ground beef to dig their way out of a fortress.
You look at that and you say, how did this happen? How did this happen in this facility?
Could it have been by seducing a prison guard to help them escape?
When you're hearing her tell investigators, I had sex with Matt, what do you think?
I'm thinking, Joyce Mitchell, what are you thinking?
Tonight, our correspondents out in the field and in the forest.
Because they are deep in it, and it's total darkness what they've got.
Retracing the desperate steps of the killers with the men who led the charge.
He's yelling. Stop.
Yelling, come out.
Chilling new details you've never heard until now.
Matt's attitude was, we have to kill or rob somebody, that's what we should do.
In the real locations you've never seen until now. The campsite hideout in the woods.
So that changed everything, finding their DNA in this cabin.
How it all played out step by step.
Kept the pressure all the way from the Canadian border south.
And the final dramatic showdown for the high-stakes capture of David Sweat.
Cook knew immediately, I've got the right guy. This is Sweat. It's on.
It's on. You're about to see how those words will lead to a final shootout, the end of a white-knuckle 23-day manhunt. But in many ways, that will just be the start of what we are still piecing together about that daring escape.
In fact, call it the summer of prison escapes, the notorious El Chapo, the tunnel right underneath his shower. But we're going to start with that other prison right here in America, an escape right out of Shawshank Redemption, practicing for months in the middle of the night. Here's Gio Benitez.
It's the first June weekend in the scenic Adirondacks region of New York, a summer playground. But this relaxing Saturday is about to become an overtime workday for Major Charles Guest of the New York State Police.
I was sound asleep. I got a phone call at about 6:06 a.m.
Guest heads to Dannemora, a one-horse town whose lifeblood is one mammoth building, the hulking Clinton Correctional Facility. Outside, 5,000 residents. Inside, 3,000 prisoners. And overnight, that population has just been lowered by 2.
They had 2 unaccounted for inmates at this point, which is a problem in and of itself. A total breach had been made of the perimeter, so we knew that the unaccounted for prisoners had become 2 escapees at large.
Finding the men will be Major Guess's problem. Keeping the local community safe, that's the job of Clinton County Sheriff David Favreau.
Didn't believe it, though.
Really?
No. My response to the text was, this isn't funny on a Saturday morning.
It's no joke. 2 convicted murderers have escaped from Clinton, a legendary prison where the worst of the worst are dispatched.
I'm not doing time.
In the past, there were the likes of notorious gangster Lucky Luciano, seen here portrayed in Boardwalk Empire.
Let him spill the beans.
And until a few hours ago, there were 2 modern-day depraved criminals, Richard Matt, who murdered and mutilated his former boss, and David Sweat, a heartless cop killer. Governor Andrew Cuomo rushes to the scene, worried nobody's busted out of Clinton in 100 years. Officials show the governor the trail of the escape.
It was elaborate, it was sophisticated, it encompassed drilling through steel walls and steel pipes, so this was not easily accomplished.
We now know the breakout has been months in the making. Way back in January, David Sweat makes a New Year's resolution to relocate. He begins sawing through the walls of his cell using a smuggled hacksaw blade.
All they used was the hacksaw blades to get out, so that would make sense on the length of time that it took them to do it.
By February, he has methodically cut through the steel wall of his cell, 3/8 of an inch thick, and continues carving through the wall of his next-door neighbor, too, Richard Matt.
Were they clean holes?
They were. There's an air duct vent in each of these cells. They cut out around the air duct, removed it, and they're large enough for a person the size of Matt or Sweat to get through.
And so behind those cells, there's some sort of corridor, right? A catwalk.
Yeah, it's a catwalk that goes through the length of the back of the cells, and there are 4 different tiers.
Night after night, after guards finish bed checks, Sweat freely wanders those catwalks, descending into the bowels of the prison. He finds a hammer a workman left behind and uses it to knock through a brick wall, discovering on the other side a 24-inch heating pipe which leads underneath the 30-foot prison wall. The plan? Open the pipe and crawl to freedom, just like Tim Robbins' character in The Shawshank Redemption. Sweat and Matt joke that though it took Robbins 20 years in the movie, they will only need 10. As it turns out, it will be far less.
Sweat was down there multiple nights, and he did most of the work, and they cut through the pipes. They were just persistent.
And fastidious, too. A fan hooked up to electricity in the tunnel keeps him from getting too sweaty. A second set of clothes from getting too dusty while cutting through that heating pipe. By May, as the weather warms, the blistering steam is shut off. Meanwhile, the stocky Matt goes on a crash diet, so he's skinny enough to slither through their escape route.
To get through the pipe, which was less than 2 feet in diameter, and to get through the wall that they broke, he had to lose weight. And even then, Sweat says he had difficulty getting through.
By that night in June, it's all systems go. They execute their plan to perfection. They come out of the pipe near a manhole cover and emerge on the street a block from the prison. They leave behind a twisted calling card, this tiny note. Have a nice day.
And there's that taunting message they left behind. Have a nice day.
It's an insult, obviously, to us.
And where will the killers go? The prison is located in the densely wooded, extreme northeast corner of New York State. The Canadian border is less than 20 miles away. Vermont is a short boat ride across Lake Champlain. As Sheriff Favreau drives through town, things are still quiet.
You're in a residential area, a lot of homes very close together. Most of these people right here worked at the prison, people totally unsuspected, and preparing for a beautiful weekend, not really knowing what was going on.
But now the word starts spreading. Automated phone calls throughout the area.
This is an important message from the New York State Police. The search continues for 2 men who escaped from the Clinton Correctional Facility. Police are reminding residents in the area to remain on alert.
Hundreds of officers now on a massive manhunt.
The search heating up.
The 2 are still on the loose.
Remain at large.
Armed and dangerous.
They are very dangerous.
As people hear the news, amazement turns to fear.
I almost vomited. That's how scared I am.
We have a bunch of property back here with some woods, and it just freaks me out that they could be running around back there.
But for one employee of the prison, a woman named Joyce Mitchell, there was a special kind of fear. You'll see why very soon.
We're leaving no stone unturned. They could be literally anywhere.
As the search goes into high gear, Major Guest is in command.
My goal was to assemble literally the best team to assist me in our overarching objective of capturing these guys and returning them to the facility.
Investigators are searching these dense woods by ground and by air, launching helicopters to get that critical bird's-eye view, all to find those prisoners. But the bad guys have a head start in those very thick woods.
6 or 7 hours, they could be on New Jersey, getting near Virginia. They could be way out west.
Stay with your partner, 2-man team.
And make no mistake,
Richard Matt is the devil.
These are very, very bad guys.
Extremely violent.
Who is David Sweat? Is he a monster?
Yes.
It's a very dangerous situation.